Hey guys, my name is Professor Arjun Sondhi, and hopefully I intrigued you enough about economics and you understand how important it is in our lives before we move on to the production possibility frontier, which is where we stopped last time. So while I'm writing, just so you understand, last time we talked about what is economics. We use scarce resources to satisfy human wants and produce goods and services to satisfy those unlimited human wants. So now we're going to get into the next model, which is the production possibility frontier, which helps us determine and gives you some economic concepts of how the different combinations of goods that an economy can produce. Now, when you think of a production possibility frontier, it can be both for an individual, it can be for a business, or it can be for a country. So we can narrow it down or broaden it as much as we would like, so we can analyze it at whichever level we would like. So I'll do an example where we look at two commodities that an economy is deciding to produce. So let's start with a simple example for the country. Let's say we pick two goods, food and cars, that a country is deciding to produce between. So we will look at the different combinations and some economic concepts that you will learn along the way. So let me just pick some numbers. So let's say for food, we want to either produce a combination between 0 and 4 units of food. You can think of this as either rice or wheat or anything that might help you understand better. And then for cars, let's say we're going to again pick a combination of different cars to produce. So let me ask you a question before I further go into the example. If a country has a choice between producing 0 food and 4 food, do you think that they will produce the most number of cars when we are producing 0 food, or do you think we will produce the most number of cars when we are producing 4 food? Again, think in terms of if we are using all the resources in an economy to produce these combinations of goods, where do you think the most number of cars can be produced? All right, so I'm sure you guessed correctly that if we are using all of these resources to produce these goods, if I'm producing 0 food, that means I'm using none of the resources towards producing food, which would then mean that I'm using all the resources towards producing cars. So therefore we can produce either 10 cars and 0 food. That is one combination of the two goods that a country can produce given the current resources. So given that we have X hectares of land in India and we have, let's say, 1 million people that are working, and then we have 10,000 machines and 1,000 factories. If those are the resources that are available for us to use, if all of those get used, we are going to be able to produce 10 cars and 0 food. And then as we go down this row, you'll see that the number of cars that we are able to produce has to go down because we now choose to produce more food. So again, let me just write down some numbers here for cars. So you can see that as we want to produce more of one good, we have to give up some of the other, which is a very important economic concept, is that there are trade-offs. If I want more of one, I have to give up something else down the road. So this is a numerical way to understand a production possibility frontier. As you'll see throughout our different classes, that most economic concepts are understood using theory, giving an example, numerically, and then also graphically. It's very important that you understand this concept graphically, as you will be tested on both the numerical part as well as the graphical part. So most economics graphs are drawn on two coordinates. You have an x-axis and a y-axis. I'm going to, for this example, put food on the x-axis, and I'm going to put cars on the vertical axis. So as you've learned in your math class, this is the origin where both units are 0, and then depending on which of these combinations we are producing, we will pick a corresponding point within this area. So let's just graph it out. So when we are producing 0 food and 10 cars, that means we are on 0 at the food axis, and then let's say 10 for cars. So that's one point. And the other extreme case is 4 food and 0 cars. So those are the two extreme cases, and then you're connecting the dots. And as when I asked you the question, the relationship is negative. If I want to produce more food, I have to give up some cars. If on the other hand, I want to produce more cars, I have to give up some food. So we'll see that as you draw this relationship, when you have 2 food, you're going to have 9 cars, and so on and so forth. As practice, you should, so I've given you the outline of the graph, I've given you 3 out of the 5 points. You should try to put the remaining points on this graph to make sure that you understand the relationship here before we talk about some concepts relating to the production possibility frontier. So that's the model. Now there are a few important concepts that we're going to talk about within the model. So this line, which is the PPF or the production possibility frontier, tells us what? That tells us that given all these resources, a country or an individual or a society or a business can choose any combination on this line to produce some combination of food and cars. If a country, for example, produces somewhere here, that means they're producing 2 units of food but 5 units of cars or 5 cars, then this country is wasting some resources. So they are producing inefficiently. But any point on this line is an efficient use of the resources. Now there is no one point that's better than the other, that just depends on the preferences of the people in the society. So whether we want to produce 10 cars and 0 food, or 4 food and 0 cars, or 3 food and 4 cars is dependent on the country. So here I've laid out the basic production possibility frontier. Next class we'll summarize this a little bit and then move on to the next topic from the first chapter. Thank you, have a good day, and I'll see you guys next class.